What's up, Internet? You're tuning to episode 118 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where two best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
And making his return to the show today and rounding out the trio we got going on today, Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, ahoy.
What's up, man? Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. It feels like every time you say returning to the show, I'm like, wait, have I been gone that long? But I guess I have actually been away for a few weeks this time.
Yeah, you know, and
Yeah.
like I always think of this show as kind of like it's Steve and I usually, right? Like that's this show. So it's like whenever, even if you were on every week, I'd be like, you're a very special guest this week,
Guest,
Max, right?
yeah.
Right? You know,
I'd like to be treated like a guest wherever I go, you know.
Yeah, no matter what, you get treated with a little pomp and
Yeah.
circumstance when you come on this show.
Thank you very much. I get to use the ensuite instead of using the public, you know, the toilet that you guys use. It's
Exactly.
very nice.
Yeah, we bring you like a little cheese plate, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Perfect.
It's great. It's great. And you know what? Even more special is that you programmed this show, Max. So I'm excited. You put this one together. So let's jump into it. Because Steve and I going in relatively fresh. All right. So we're going to talk about basically where we're at, right? We are rounding the corner here for 2023, a year absolutely stacked with high quality releases, whether it's AAA or indies, your bag. There's been a lot to feast on. I think pretty much whatever your predilections are. And with only a few weeks left, the
horrible, what a horrible phrase.
Yeah,
I don't like that at all.
The run up to Game of the Year 2023 is tough. Tough. So we're going to talk today about what are the games that we still want to play that have come out this year. What are the games that we have started playing that we want to finish by the end of the year? And then kind of, just any other smaller games, hidden gems that we think people should check out and make sure that they get onto before it's time to judge Game of the Year in just a few weeks. And to remind y'all, if you're a new listener, if you weren't around for last year's discussion, or if you forgot, we do our Game of the Year show in January to give ourselves a little bit of extra time on that winter break to catch up and wrap up on some of the games that we missed this year. So if you want to make a recommendation, you got a chance.
As everyone should. Persona 5 Tactica came out this week, and it's completely eliminated from even being up for consideration for the Game Awards, despite getting a great Metacritic score and being well received by critics, because it came out like 2 weeks after nominations went live, and I hate that. So I'd rather we got all the games that 2023 has to offer out the way.
You have no idea how vital to my gaming time that sort of like week of Christmas is. Like I can chomp down on the biggest, meatiest game in that. It's like nothing in that time.
It's like
the BMT,
always
the biggest, meatiest, tastiest game.
It's always like a good opportunity to like whether you want to, like bang out a couple small indies or like check off one of the maybe AAA games you missed earlier in the year, or like what I think I'm going to be doing this year, which is running through the end of like every game I started and, trying to make the best use of that time that I can. But
I'd love to know how you are going to get through every single game that you started. I do not think it's possible. I think the amount of time that we have left, that's Baldur's Gate 3, and that's it. Like, there's no way I can get anything else done if I'm committing to finishing all of them.
You're going to have to RCC. You have to rush to completion all of these games and literally just like, okay, cool, game to end. Even if it's like a quick way out ending or like an ending with like the bad ending, you're just going to have to do it just so you can put it on your list as a finished game.
On easy mode.
Exactly.
I'm in a good spot with a couple of these games because like I am probably 1 or 2 sittings away from finishing a few of the games on my list. So I'm hoping that, I get a good weekend under my belt and I can knock 2 games out and then
absolutely
chip away at some of the bigger guys.
Don't we love having hobbies that we have to schedule and like plan just to be able to enjoy this
right? Yeah.
Well, look, we're all sadists, right? Like we're all insane people because the hobby occupying hours and hours of our time a week was not enough. We also were like, what if I also spend hours a week talking about it? And then I have to have opinions on these games that I started or I've done them wrong, right? How else could you make...
We are problem people, aren't we, really?
There's always
Yeah.
that one game though that we get to in like February, and we're just like, this would have made the game of the year list if we'd have got to it, and it's literally
Uh-huh.
just happens every single year, and it sucks because I always want to make sure that I kind of give every game its dues, but
Yeah.
you can't. It's not possible.
Well, I think this is why I wanted to sort of maybe have a little bit of a check-in, a little bit of a focus in, and sort of, because it could be that we argue with each other and we say, "Oh no, you need to try and get this in." We've got games that we're going to put on our list, and obviously it's a joint
Sure.
effort. There are going to be things that I've played and you maybe haven't started yet. I'm like, "Oh, you need to play that so it reaches the end of gets on the game of the year list. Get it for your birthdays are coming up, it's Christmas coming up. Get asking for these games, even though we're adults and we just spend our money whenever the hell we want anyway. But still. Do you mind if I kick us off then
No, please.
so the games that I'm currently playing and sort of games that I'm aiming to finish, just because I have a feeling they're going to be on my game of the year list. So I actually
So, just so
want
I
to
can
get.
clarify, because
Go
we
on.
have 3 categories here. So is this
Yes.
games you've already started that you're trying to finish for
This
end
is
of the
games
year?
that I've already started and games that I intend on playing this year. No matter what, I
Gotcha.
intend on playing these games this year because
You're
these are
rolling
games that
credits on these.
I think these games are going to sort of make their way into my game of the year list, and I think it'd be a shame if I don't make a solid effort
Got
to
you.
get them
Okay.
on there, right?
Okay.
So I'm currently playing Resident Evil 4 Remake across PC and Steam Deck. And that has been earlier you mentioned how we're sadists, and that I think has been like, as a person who's really into Souls likes and Dark Souls and like Sekiro and all those kind of games, Elden Ring, who doesn't mind a challenge and sort of doesn't mind getting beaten up a bit and sort of going over again till I do it. This game has all of that, but none of the oh I did it at the end of like oh cool now I get to rest and I get to restore all of my health potions. This is just I get
Gotcha.
to a save point and I'm like cool I've got no ammo still. Time to push on to the next one and hope for the best. But I'm on the final um chapter of this game. So this is what I'm absolutely going to have done because I've literally just got to do this last chapter. I reckon I've got maybe an hour and a half left at most, and I'm done. And I'm gonna see where this ranks on my list. If it ranks on my list, I'm gonna have to do some thinking. Consult the list because I assume you guys are already sort of working on your list in your head, right? Your game of the years.
I've got my list down in notes
Yeah,
currently.
same.
Oh, so
Same.
you've
And
already written it down. Okay.
yeah,
Interesting. You
and
both have. Yeah.
That's because
it's
we've finished enough games to have a
constantly
list. Pete. That's
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
it's
Listen.
constantly moving around.
Don't start slinging shit at me. I've definitely finished more games than Steve. I don't know about you,
Oh,
No,
man.
yeah,
I
no,
don't think you have. I really don't think you have.
How many games have you finished this year?
Let me have a look.
Oh, so they have to come out this year, or
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
yeah. But but games that I've finished that came out this year and games that I finished overall are two different numbers.
Yeah, but
I
we're not
think
talking
you've-
about that right now. We're talking about your
Okay.
top.
All
You,
right,
you were
fine.
making your list for this year. You're not including the retro game that you beat,
fine.
right?
All right, fine. Well,
Yeah, I finished 8 games this year so far.
Okay. I mean, I think I'm pretty close to that, if not. I think
And then
I got a lot of games
yeah.
to finish, but I started a lot of games this year. That's the problem.
I think I'm on 10 or 11 games that came out this year that I've done, and
Nice.
then
Very
overall,
nice.
which is a lot more than last year. Last year, I remember when we were doing. Sorry, earlier this year when we did Game of the Year, I was scrambling.
Has your gaming habits changed? Like, when you play them, is that, like, factored into the fact that you can finish more games, or the fact like, has anything changed around that? Like, why have you finished more games this year than last year, or is it just because the games are smaller?
Last year, I finished more games overall. I just played more games that came out this year because there were so many games I didn't want to miss out on this year. Whereas last year, I did an awful
Got it,
lot of
yeah.
like playing catch up, picking things up on sale. There wasn't as much coming
Yeah,
out
like,
last
me and
year that I
Pete
wanted to get there and
emulated
then.
we emulated a bunch of shit last year, so it's
Yeah,
just like,
yeah,
"Oh,
yeah.
gotta try it out."
Yep.
But
Because
also, like, there was more of a quiet period last year. Like, there was
Mhm.
like time for me to play like a bunch of old games again, right? Because it's like, yeah, whatever, right? Like, well, I'm not missing a ton. Whereas, like, there was not a period this year where I wasn't knee deep in at least 2 games at a time.
Mhm.
Yes. October last year, I remember I was like, "Oh, I've got loads of like free time. I'm just going to play a bunch of spooky games." October this year, I was like, "Well, I have to finish this game before Spider-Man and Mario come out," and I had to finish
Yeah.
both of those games and blah yada yada yada. It just goes on and on and on. Anyway, that's what I've played now, and I'm going to finish hopefully maybe tomorrow, and then I'm going to move straight on into something a bit lighter because like I said before about it's such an oppressive game. I just don't want to be challenged so much. I'm going to play Lies of P. Pretty immediately after
Oh,
that
yeah,
because
good.
I
Nice
know that
skill.
is a game that I'm going to love because I love the demo. I know it's going to fairly high on the list. I already know that from not even having played it, because I know that I'm going to enjoy it, which is a weird thing to go into a game knowing you're gonna like it. But
Mhm.
there have also been games this year that I've gone in knowing I'm going to like, and I've maybe not really liked that much. So, or that sort of gone under my expectations. So it could be interesting. It might not happen. And then a couple of indies, couple of smaller games to sort of like fill in some gaps. Some one of them's Cocoon, which is a game that I think you guys have mentioned before. A game that I really
Yeah,
really
great
want to give
game.
a go. Yeah, big fan of Inside and Limbo. A game I can probably do in a couple of sittings as well. I did Inside in one sitting. I started it when with a full Steam Deck battery, and then I was like racing to the end of the game on like 5-10%, something like that. Like, come on, come on, come on. And the final game that I want to play is Dave the Diver. I actually am completely unsure if Dave the Diver would make it on my list, but I want to give it a good go to see if it would.
Yeah.
Um, so that's my. I'm just some sausage. Have a sausage is made here. I'm currently seeing Pete type out the games that he that
It's
he
just
Mhm.
an
wants
it's
to
just
try
an
and
abstain
get
it's a lot. It ain't happening, right?
done.
Like, but
Wow.
hey, here's the thing. Part of your thing was what are some of the ones you're gonna save for next year? So some of these
Yeah, that's a good point.
are
That is
on
a good
that
point.
list.
That's a
For
good
sure.
point. Maybe I should yeah, keep adding to mine. So yeah, that's my list of games that I'm definitely 100% going to beat. I do think Lies of P might take up a lot of my time, because they're quite, you know, I think these sort of the Souls likes are longer than sort of you think they are sometimes when you're sort of doing things over and over again. But
Yeah,
yeah,
right. It's very
that
easy.
is my.
You have no way of knowing, right? Because it's like
Mhm.
a bus could take you might get lucky and get it in 1 or 2, and you might it might take you 10, right? And like you could spend a whole
Exactly,
night
yeah.
and make no progress.
I might rage quit.
Sure.
I can't see that, Max. I think you're a persistent guy. I think if anyone out of us is gonna complete it, it's you. I'm curious though. Like, there's a game that's on both mine and Pete's lists, right? Baldur's
Mhm.
Gate 3. Both of us have started it. We've spoken about it multiple times on the show. It's not anywhere on your list. Are you planning on playing that at all?
It is actually on my, what I'd like to get around to if I can, and
Okay.
not say
He's got it in the
it's just
second category.
it's hidden
Okay.
because I didn't format it very well. So the thing with
There
Baldur's
we
Gate
go.
3, and
Right. Okay.
I'll get to it now because 'cause we're talking about it, and then I can move on to to Pete talking about it because it's in his list as well, I can see. The reason I've put Baldur's Gate 3 there is because it's such a big game that I'm either not gonna touch it at all until next year, or I'm going to pick it up around Christmas and then have it finished just before Game of the Year. It's going to be one of the two, and I don't want to commit to it right now, because it is such a huge commitment. But I
Yeah,
am
it
very
is.
excited to see how it looks on the OLED and how it performs on the Steam Deck, and I think it'd be really nice to play like at Christmas, like you know, at events and stuff, where I don't want to talk to people. But yeah, that is definitely on my list. It's one that I keep every month. I'm like, I should definitely do Baldur's Gate 3. And I have actually put the money in my Steam account ready to buy it when I do that. Um, I just haven't done it just yet. So yes. Pete, you've written things down. Why don't you talk about your what you're playing between now, or what you're playing currently, and what you'd like to finish by the end of the year?
Sure. So the 3 games that are at the top of my list right now are, Super Mario RPG, which I've been talking about over on Nintendo Noise. I'm in the process of playing that right now. I'm, like, very near to the end. There are 7 stars, right? It's part of the original title, so that's not a spoiler. I've got 5 of them. So, I should be done with that game, I would think, pretty quickly. I have now 2 games I need to finish up that I'm doubling back for. One of them is Tears of the Kingdom. That's another one that I am like, I think probably one good sitting away from finishing. If
Mhm.
you have completed the game, um, there is a moment near the end of the game that very much signals that you're gearing up to the end of the game here, right? So pack your bags and get ready. That's where I left off when I stopped playing the game earlier this year after 90 some odd hours or what have you. So that's another one where I think I'll probably get through that pretty quickly, and that'll be like another nice one, feather in my cap. Starfield is another one that I am in the middle of, and this is kind of now the tough situation I'm in, where I have probably a decent chunk of time left to put into Starfield to finish it. Um, my other option there is Baldur's Gate 3. And I feel torn because I feel like I need to play more of Baldur's Gate 3 to really, figure out how I feel about it and where it ranks in my game of the year list, and to really like solidify my opinion about it because I know it's a game that's very much to my taste. Um, but I'm a lot closer to finishing Starfield, so, like, I could probably roll credits on that, understand what the New Game Plus is hook that Steve has been singing the praises of, and I could
Yeah.
walk away and kind of solidify my opinion on that one as well. And I think they're both games that I imagine being in my top 10 if I have enough time to, um, dedicate to them, but it's like
I
making
think
that
if you
choice
just
now
want
is
to
gonna be
know
a tough thing.
I think if you just want to know what that hook is, you could probably spend like 5 hours finishing up the main quest and just blitzing through to get
Yeah.
to the point, do a save before you find out what New Game Plus is, and then you can always go back to that save
That's a
before New
good
Game
point, I could
Plus
just pick up from
and
where I
finish the
was.
rest of it if you wanted to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll do that, and then I can at least
You roll credits
You,
and it
you,
counts, and you can
yeah.
talk
At
about
least
it,
you
you know?
know what it is then, and then you can decide if you want to continue playing New Game Plus or if you want to switch over to Baldur's Gate 3 and kind of get further in that. Because I don't think either of us got to chapter 2 in Baldur's Gate 3, right?
no, I'm really deep in chapter 1, but I had a problem the other day where I went to boot it back up, and there's this kinda sense of, like, "What was I doing again? Like, where am I?" And, like, I kinda remember, like, I remember where I am broadly in the story, but where I was, like, at that moment, I'm like, "I don't really know where I am. I'm a little rusty on the controls," and I am wondering whether or not it might be beneficial to just roll a new character and kind of use the learnings from last time to hopefully get through it a little quicker and kind of get reoriented in the game. So I got a big decision to make there, but I think to stave that off, my priority for the next week is going to be to wrap up those Switch games and then kind of tackle whichever big RPG I'm going to get back into.
Of course. Sounds like, it's interesting you talk about Mario RPG because, we had a conversation where you were saying like, oh, you didn't think sort of Metro Prime Remastered or, uh, Resident Evil 4 Remake, like how you were sort of torn about those sort of counting. Do you not to sort of, ruin the whole thing, but do you think Super Mario RPG is something that if you get to the end of it and you go, "Yeah, cool," that you'd wanna put on the list? Or is it something you would intentionally hold back because of that? Or
So I think given how good this year is, my knee-jerk reaction to you right now is I am going to consider it for my top 10, because, by our own rules, right? Like a release this year counts, and it is, for all intents and purposes, a new game.
Mhm.
While also not being a new game. But I am going to weigh that against it when I'm deciding where it ranks on my game of the
Sure,
year. So if there's
sure.
another game that I thought maybe, is very close to it in quality, like let's just say for the sake of example or argument, right? I get to the end of the year and I was to finish both this and Sea of Stars, and I thought that they were neck and neck, and I had to decide which one was going to be number 10 on my list. I would choose Sea of Stars because it came out this year, and I
Sure.
think that for my personal, metric for what I think game of the year should be, it should be a celebration of the games that are representative of this year. And I think that when you look back on Super Mario RPG, as good as it is, and as much as I am liking it, I don't think you'll look back and remember it as one of the biggest games of 2023. You're going to look back and be like, what a great remaster that was. Like, what a great
Yeah, sure.
achievement it was to bring that game back for a new generation and make it feel fresh again, right?
Absolutely.
It's not the way that you're like, man, 2017, what an amazing year, like Breath of the Wild, right? Like, I
Did you
feel
mean
that
you mean
way.
you mean Tears of the Kingdom?
No, in 2017, I said.
Oh, sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't realize, sorry.
but
Oh,
for
I was
this year, I had already
embarrassed
set it up
myself.
that way. I get where you got lost in the sauce there.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of generally how I feel, right? Like, I think it for me, it felt bad to see Resident Evil 4 remake on the list for game of the year this year, and to not see, Jedi Survivor or Final Fantasy or Starfield, right? That were new games that had, you know, I think a lot to say and a lot to offer, and whether or not they can live up to the height of Resident Evil 4 remake is, in the eye of the beholder, right? But like for me, it's I would rather celebrate the games that came out this year rather than, yeah, oh cool, one of the best games of all time got remade. Of course, it was one of the best games that came out this year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Stevie baby, what are your
Yeah,
games for this year?
so what am I playing and hoping to finish? So games I've
Yeah.
started but not finished.
Well, not even games you've necessarily started, but games that you think in the next sort of month that you wanna get
Uh-oh.
done, what's coming in the next month for you?
In the next month, I really wanted to get Baldur's Gate 3
Mhm.
done, but it will not boot on my Steam Deck, and I
Oh,
cannot fix
yeah.
it at all.
You tried
It
Really?
keeps
reinstalling, I
You have
crashing.
assume?
uninstalled it and everything?
I've uninstalled it. I did the validate install files, all of that junk.
Are
There's
you
something wrong with
using
it.
the, I remember seeing someone say that you changed the Proton you're using. Did
I've
that fix
changed
it still?
Proton, I've tried Experimento, I've tried Hotfix, I've tried GE. I cannot
Huh.
get this thing to run on my Steam Deck, so I'm getting to a point where I'm just like, "Doesn't fucking work, I'll move on to something
Oh,
else."
no.
And that's gonna be a real shame because I
This
was
is
enjoying Baldur's
tragic.
Gate 3,
Wait a minute, why
but
don't
I
you
can't get it to work.
never mind. I
It's
was gonna say, why don't you PlayStation and stream it, then you have to buy a
I don't
second
I want
copy.
yeah,
That's
I don't own it,
and
and I'm
start
yeah, I'm not
again.
buying another
yeah,
copy.
that would be ridiculous.
And I probably would then need to start again because I can't get into the game to turn on the
You could
cloud
open it
save.
on a PC though and cross save.
I don't think it will even open on my PC, to be honest, Pete. I don't have a good PC, to enable cross save, so I
You
don't know
know
if that
someone with one
is
though, right?
feasible.
Like, you could get a friend to do that for you.
Possibly,
I
yeah.
could
I
do it
guess I
for you.
could
I could
send over
log in and
the
do it. Yeah.
I could
Let's
send over
do it. I think it'd be a
yeah.
massive shame if
Let's
this
make it
doesn't
happen.
happen. The campaign for Steve to play Baldur's Gate 3 is real.
Look, I was determined to get it to work, but it just sometimes you wanna sit down and you wanna play a game, and you don't wanna sit down to have to troubleshoot the
Yeah,
game, and
definitely.
I spent an hour of my time troubleshooting this bloody thing, left it on to re-download overnight, and I still couldn't get it to work, and I'm just like, "This is eating into the only time I had to play games." So I was annoyed by it, and I'm just like, "I don't think I'm gonna get it to work." So, I'd like to finish every game I've started, but I don't think that's feasible. I think Tears of the Kingdom's probably gonna be up there. I at least wanna get further in that game than I have,
Since
and at least
Baldur's Gate is a bust, I think that's what you should prioritize so
yeah,
you could
I
get
kind of
deeper in.
agree. But there's a bunch of other games I've started and not finished. Diablo 4, for example, that kind of came, and then Baldur's Gate and Tears of the Kingdom kind of ate its lunch for me, and I was like, "Oh," so I should probably jump back on that and finish it.
Mhm.
But I know there was a bunch of changes that were done with the season 2 stuff that people really just didn't like. I'm hoping that they've kind of reverted some of that stuff and I can kind of jump back in.
It seems like the
Um,
narrative is kind of shifted back in its favor, like, it seems like
yeah,
people are happy with it again, but yeah.
which is really, really annoying for someone trying to review these games. It's like it just swings one way and then the other way constantly, and it's like, can you just get it right?
I
Um,
think that's probably why you saw it not get as many nominations as maybe you would have expected earlier this year, right?
mm,
Because it did kinda have the narrative shift on it, and I think it's, like, similar with, like, what you saw with, like, Star Wars, where it's like, well, it came out and it was kinda like it was good, but it had some technical problems, and, like, that's what you remember, right? Is like, "Oh, yeah, like, Diablo 4 was cool, and then season 1 sucked, so whatever."
yeah. And then at the moment, I'm finishing up American Arcadia, which I'm really enjoying, and that's a small game, so I should finish that hopefully this weekend.
That's on my
And
list for stuff I'd like to get to for sure. I really
I really
enjoyed
hope you
the Steam
do
Next Fest
because
when we
that
played it.
game just has twists and turns and cool gameplay elements that you just don't expect. It's a
It's a
really
short
great
one.
game.
So, like, I think I
Yeah.
should be able to sneak it in at
That's
the
a
end of the year.
two-dayer if you really wanted
Yeah.
to, you know?
So, it's like, what, 4 to 8 hours or something like that, right?
No, it was 12 hours, I think it
12, okay.
was.
That's a
Mm.
little longer, but yeah, 2-dayer you could do.
Max, back to you.
Sorry, hello, yeah, so those are the games that Steve's gonna do next. Sorry, I
I was
got
like, this is Max's segment,
no, I got really distracted there. I'm
You got
so,
it,
so
buddy.
sorry.
Do you want me to pick up
Um
you want me to pick it up?
No, no, we're good, we're good.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was just looking at my another list of mine, and I was trying to see if I'd missed anything, and I hadn't, so that's good. So the next section we're going to talk about is the games that we want to get around to if we can. So like with I said with Baldur's Gate 3, like I have every intention of definitely getting those games in, but if it comes around to it, and I've got some time at Christmas, or if these games are quicker, or if anything, if I bounce off of these games and think actually no, I don't want to play those, what would I like to play, or
Gotcha.
what am I going to be saving for 2024? What do I intend on playing from this year? Still, that it's
But
not
you just don't
guaranteed I'm
think
gonna
it's gonna
do it.
make the cut for game of
And
the
it's
year,
not
probably.
guaranteed it's gonna get it in time for game of the
Yeah.
year because these, like Steve said, these could be games that I play, and it turns out that it's the best game we played from the last year. It's like when I played Nier Automata in 2018 and was like, God damn it,
This
that
happened
would
to
have
me
been
with
up there, you
Undertale.
know?
Like, I think I
Yeah.
played Undertale in, like, January of the following year and was like, "Oh my god, what the hell? Like,
Yeah,
this was the
what was I
best game of
doing?
last year. What the
Yeah.
absolute hell?"
I spent a lot of 2020 playing a lot of 2019's games and going, "My god, how did I
Yeah.
not play Sekiro, Control, and Jedi's Fallen Order last year? Like, how 2019 was such an underrated year, I think." Anyway. I'll start again. I've already spoke about Baldur's Gate 3, but there are some other games this year, games that I actually have, these are some throwbacks, if you can call less than a year a throwback. These are things we've spoken about on the podcast a number of times. Hi-Fi Rush and Dead Space are two games that I bought, both of them on launch. Got a decent chunk of the way into both of them, and then I think there's about 3 instances or 4 instances of me on the podcast saying, "Yeah, I'm gonna get back to Hi-Fi Rush soon." It just never happened, and I wanna do it, and I
Yeah,
just
Hi-Fi
don't
I've
Rush
think
is
it's
tried,
gonna
Mac.
happen this year.
I've really tried, but it's one of those games where you shit on those later levels because you've lost your rhythm and you've
Yep.
lost the kind of the cadence with it.
Sure.
Yeah. I do think it's
Yeah.
something I'm gonna have to start again, and that's fine because I don't think I was only like 3 or 4 hours in anyway. Oh, no, so that is a lot of time though. But I do fully intend on playing this game. It's just whether or not it makes it, for game of the year. And I think that's probably one of the big like that's a shames because I do think that it probably, if I was to actually put the effort in and do it, it might get there. Um,
That one was on my
That
list
one,
too. I had the same problem with it where, like, I started it, I enjoyed it, but it was one of those games I think I picked up in between releases where I was like,
mhm,
I need something to tide me over till the next thing I'm waiting for.
yeah.
And then that came out, and it was
I think
like,
in
look, you
some
two.
way. Oh, go on.
Just think about how phenomenal this game looks on the OLED screen and on the Steam
yeah.
Deck, and it
Mm,
and how wonderful it feels at 90 hertz, and how great
mm.
it sounds on those new speakers, and it's a good demonstration of why you should get the Steam Deck OLED, and you
This
can
is
hear
the
about
wrong
that on the
podcast, Steve.
Steam Deck podcast.
You can check out the Steam Deck podcast where hopefully I'll have my own OLED impressions
Give it
of
a go for
it.
that, I think, if you bought
Ooh.
it on PC.
I've got it installed on my current Steam Deck. It's just the screen's too.
It's not it,
Not popping.
apparently.
It's not popping.
I had a great time with it on Steam Deck for what it's worth. I thought it's great.
I bought it to
I was
play it on
playing
the
it at
Steam Deck.
120 FPS on my Xbox. So.
Oh, my TV can do that. The next game is Dead Space, which is a game that I've spoken about more like with you, Steve, where what you said earlier, where I don't want to boot up a game and troubleshoot it, and that's why this game has not been
Yeah.
finished because I had problems with it all the way up until like last week when I finally solved the problems with that game. And I've tried so many different things, and I finally realized it was FSR that was somehow causing my huge lag spikes, and the game just wouldn't work. But now I know it does work, so that's fine. The next game is interesting because this is a game that I had intended and already having finished, which is The Last Faith. I kickstarted it in 2020. Very exciting game. It's sort of like a 2D Bloodborne, sort of a lot of blasphemous stuff. I was really, really excited for this. It showed up in a
Oh,
couple
I
of
remember this one.
state of plays. I was really excited
Yeah.
for it. And then on the day of launch, all backers were told you'll get your game 2 hours early. I checked my inbox at the time we were supposed to get the game, and I get a sorry, Switch codes aren't available. We couldn't change to Steam. I couldn't
Damn.
I couldn't do anything basically. So I had to just wait, and I was planning on taking it away with me on a trip I was going on and then sort of playing it. I only got my code 2 days ago, and at this point I'm now balls deep right at the end of Resident Evil 4 remake, and I've got things I want to play, and I feel like I think the Switch version has, as a lot of Switch versions of games do, has some things that need patching.
Mm,
Um, so I
that's
just
really
think
a
this is gonna
shame.
I think this is gonna wait. Like I was really jazzed for it. I think if I'd been able to change it and got it on the Steam Deck instead, I probably would have already finished it by now, you know?
That's the thing I feel like they should really let you change the code.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I've had it before with some Kickstarters where they just go, "Oh, sorry, Switch is delayed, so here is a Steam code." The Wonderful 101 did it. I think it's a shame, and the fact that we were told, "Oh, they're delayed by a couple of days," and it took over a week before they were like, "Oh yeah, here's a code." I'll play it. I'm sure I'll love it. I just, the time for me right now to play it has passed for now. But well,
Yeah, mess
um,
up your window.
yeah, I'll rush through these last ones. Pizza Tower. This is a guy. It wasn't until Steve wrote it
Oh my
down a
god,
minute
Pizza
ago.
Tower, yes.
I'm
I
adding
forgot.
this to my list because I
Yeah,
forgot I wanted to
I
play
forgot
this
it.
one.
Well, I knew I wanted to play it. I forgot it came out this year. It came out January this year. For some reason, I thought it was a last year game. That's why I didn't put it on my list. But yeah, this is definitely one. It's been on my wish list for ages. I want to give it a go. Maybe this is something we should all play in January together. Um,
We'll all just
and
hold hands and play it a year later.
I think
Oh, no,
Christmas.
I don't know. I really do wanna play it this year. I'm playing Wario Land 4 at the moment
Hmm.
in between stuff because it's, like, easy to just jump in and do a level I know like the back of my hand, and I'm just like, I really just want more Wario Land
Hmm.
and
That's Pizza
obviously
Tower all over.
Pizza Tower is just like, it's the spiritual
Yeah,
successor that we've been wanting.
yeah. Last couple of games, Alan Wake 2, really wanna get around to it, but, just not gonna have the time for it, I don't think, with all the other stuff. Tesla Grad 2 is a game that came out, that I was really excited for. Came out on the Switch, balked, have been waiting for patches, and I think in that time, it's just other things have come out, I've just not been able to get around to it. Shame, I was really looking forward to it. Pikmin 4, a game I've not really got round to, but I really want to. It looks really great. Shame. Final Fantasy 16, a game that I own and would like to get into, but I think it's gonna be such a big commitment that with all the games I know
It
I'm going to
is.
love, I don't want to take a risk on Final Fantasy 16 right now and like not enjoy it. Whereas I know the games I've got lined up, I'm going to enjoy. So yeah,
I like
cool.
that game a lot, but it is beefy. Like
Yeah.
I think it is a game where unfortunately the side quests are kind of weaker in the beginning, but they amp up to a point where like they end up being really really huge important story conduits later on. So like you want to do the side content and take your time, otherwise I think you're going to miss out on some of the better emotional beats and like I think the story is the one of the better if not the best thing about the game. So
Hmm.
I would that's probably one that's worth saving, I think. And definitely make time for Pikmin. I think Pikmin 4 really, really it's unfortunate that it came out this year because it is one of the better games that came out this year, and I do not think it got the attention that it deserves. I mean, it
Hmm.
sold really well, but
Got overshadowed by Mario Wonder and Mario RPG and Tears of the Kingdom. It's just like, what are
yeah,
you doing?
Yeah, for a sort of swan song year for the Switch, Nintendo just came out like just with
absolutely
constant
swinging.
bangers. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They
Just
did like
haymaker after haymaker.
yeah,
Like,
they did
remember
a
when Fire
4 week.
Emblem Engage came out this year? Like,
Oh
that's
God, did
not
that?
even a
Yeah,
top 5
bloody hell.
Nintendo games.
Yeah.
And that game was really good. I liked it a lot. Oh, well.
Oh, I
Wild.
forgot about, the remake as well, the remaster of Metroid Prime.
Uh-huh. Right.
Oh, is
One of the
that is
highest
that?
rated games of the year. You can't even
Yeah.
remember it came out.
Is that on anyone's lists?
No.
No, it's not on any of this. I don't think that game can be considered for my game of the year, even if I did enjoy it. It's too similar to the original.
We can argue about this in January.
That's what the folks need is another episode of what is a remake, though, actually.
Yeah.
All right, I'll get into some of
Go on,
mine.
Pete. Go on, Pete.
Oh, I did want to say Alan Wake 2 is one that's like not on my list. Just because I don't know if it's gonna be for me. I'm not usually the horror guy, but like it is a game I think if it was a quieter year, I would have tried to make time for it
Mhm.
just to even see if I could get into it because it seems really good and really appealing, but you know,
It just
I
seems
don't,
really interesting. I think, like as video games go, there's like difference. It seems different. It seems like it's doing some really
yeah,
clever stuff, and I
for
would
sure.
just really like to, yeah, give it a go.
Considering how much you liked Control, Max, I'm surprised this isn't on your list of I need to check out this year, and
Yeah,
it is on the I'll get to it next year.
I just, I when it came out, it sort of took me by surprise because I liked Control because I knew what Control is, and having played the Alan Wake remake, um, that didn't appeal to me as much. So when I sort of thought Alan Wake 2, I was like, okay, it's a sequel to Alan Wake, a game that I already thought was okay. I wasn't in love with, and yeah, it just seems really interesting and sort of a little bit unexpected for me. So it's definitely something I do want to play, even with that sort of like, I had no intention of ever playing it because of I thought Alan Wake was fine. But
Well,
yeah,
like
I
clamoring for a sequel.
yeah, I wasn't like, oh great, I would really want to play more of this. But if there was a Control 2, for example, I'd be day one there and there. There is a
Gotcha.
Control 2. We know there is, but you know what I'm saying. Sorry, Pete, continue.
No, you're good. Don't apologize. So I have a couple here. One that I would love to get around to is Coffee Talk Episode 2, Hibiscus and Butterfly. Steve and I were both really big fans of the original Coffee Talk. It's been quite a bit since that game came out, and unfortunately there was a death of one of the lead creatives on the original game as well. So I think there was kind of some question about whether or not the series would continue, whether or not we would get an episode 2. So this is one that I just again I think it was a victim of circumstance for me. It came out at a weird time. There was a lot of other stuff competing for its attention, and I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But I very much intend to. You know, the first one
Mhm.
was one that really was like one of those indie gems for me the year it came out. So I would love to give the second one a shot because I think that that is often something that I know I'm guilty of. I think a lot of us are guilty of sometimes where a great indie gets a sequel and it doesn't necessarily have the shiny new toy factor. So you're not you don't flock to the sequel as much and then it struggles. So I would like to you know give it a go and see whether or not they could maintain you know the that lightning in a bottle that I thought the first one was.
Of course.
So then I've also got Dredge, Cocoon, and Dave the Diver, which I'm rushing through because I think these are games that either you know about or you've heard people talk about. They are, you know, some of the smaller games that were making a lot of headlines this year. They were nominated for Indie of the Year, stuff like that. Each of
Yeah,
them,
yeah, that really
despite the fact
independent
that Dave the
game,
Diver not an indie game, but hey, um, so, and, you know, Cocoon, and it's like a friend of mine bought me a copy of Dredge. I have Cocoon on Game Pass. It's like I feel like they're like burning a hole in my pocket. You know, I
Mhm.
want to just you know get out there, shake the tires on them, and see if you know is this anything? Is this something that I connect with that I want to you know put more time into,
Yeah.
or are these just hot games this year that are not for me?
Also, not massively long games. These are games that you could, like I said about the Christmas break, these are games you instead of doing one big game, you could do 6 or 7 smaller games, and I
Yeah,
did Dredge. I happened to be ill when it came out, and I sort of did it in 3 days or 2 days and had a great time. Cocoon, like I said, I think I can do it in 2 sittings. Day the Diver, I thought it was gonna be a lot longer than it actually is because a friend of mine was like, "Oh, yeah, I smashed through that game in, like, a long weekend." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. These
nice.
are bite-sized, high quality, low commitment games, which I think are just what you need when you're really trying to wrap up and get it all
Definitely.
done."
Yes, maybe these are games I'll prioritize due to that.
Mhm.
Another one that's kind of similar to that is American Arcadia that we talked about earlier, right? That's one that Steve and I both played at Next Fest. I really enjoyed. I'd like to get around to that. Another shorter one, Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals. Similar energy to Coffee Talk on that one, right? Where Oxenfree, the original, was a game I really connected with and I enjoyed quite a bit. I would love to get around to the sequel. I've got it installed on my phone because you can play it free with Netflix.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I might give that a go, but
Mm.
it's just another one that like it came out like the week of my anniversary, and I was already playing Starfield, and it was just like, you know, I don't have a free weekend to jump into yet another game. And then another indie that I've had my eye on is Moonstone Island. This is another one that Steve and I talked about at the Next Fest. It is a game where you play a an alchemist who, you know, basically it's got like a Pokemon meets you know, Harvest Moon kind of energy
yeah.
to it, you know. And I really liked the demo, and
I
it's got a
remember
good art style. It's
this.
got a good feel to it. This is definitely one that is up my alley genre wise. It's got like you know, like the farming stuff, but like also the relationship building, and there's little stories in the town, and you know, it's like kind of bringing all those things together.
Mhm.
So definitely another one I'd like to spend some time with, and then a couple of games that are like real genre hits for me, but I just got overcrowded this year were Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp. This is one that you know, I really wish it had come out at its original intended release date when I had time for it. This year, it just got buried between a lot of other tactical RPGs. Another game I forgot to put on my list now that I'm thinking about it, Wargroove 2, another sequel to a game I
Oh,
really
yeah, wow.
enjoyed. And any other year, I would have picked it up day one. And just a lot of these games are getting edged out. Sea of Stars, another one that hit the same thing for me, right? I love a good JRPG. I heard a lot of great things about this game. I wanted to get in there and check it out, but it's just hard making the time for it among the 4 or 5 other big meaty JRPGs that I played this year.
Of
So
course.
it's just a little bit of you know oversaturation with some of those. And then the last one is again another sequel I can't believe I haven't played is Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I really loved the original. I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I just you know it came out way too close to Tears of the Kingdom, like within days of each other, and I had a vacation around that time as well. So it's like the time I had to play it was very very small, and I just did not ever even pick it up. So
You've not picked it up? Oh, I
no.
really thought this was gonna be on your, like, to finish list 'cause,
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to, but it's another one where it's like given it's the same problem that you had with Final Fantasy for me, right? Where I know how long it is and I know I like the first one. I think there's a high likelihood that I will like the second one, but the general reception to it was it's more of the same and in some ways it's better and in some ways it's worse. And that is not inherently a bad thing on any other year. That's a game I'd pick up day one and I'd play and I'd enjoy. But in a year where I can barely make time for games that are 9 out of 10s, it's making the 60 hours I know I would need for that game or 40 hours, whatever, that I know I need to finish that game. It was a tall order and it's just one that I never found the time for. And now here we are, a few weeks left in the year, and to decide to prioritize that over finishing the games I've already started or
yeah.
whatever, it's just like, yeah, I don't see it, right? Like I'd rather play Baldur's Gate 3 and play this one next year and be like, that was an underrated game from that year, but I don't see it as a top 10er, you know?
Was the original a top 10 for you?
Yeah, the year it came out for sure. And again, I think this game has the same problem that a lot of the games that came out this year do, where any other year, Final Fantasy 16 like would have been a game of the year contender. Starfield would have been a game of the year contender. All these games got edged out because of how many like 90s or higher came out this year. And that is just really hard to keep up with on any year, let alone, a year where there are not only an easy 5, 6, whatever 9 out of 10s or higher that you could throw on the game of the year list. There's 4, 5, 6, however many of these games that are all in that B tier where they're like, yeah, these are high 80s and they're really good. And if you're a fan of the genre, maybe they're really great, but they're not all-time bangers like that. And it just is what it is.
Yeah, it's tough. And I notice you've got one that you haven't ticked off. Diablo 4. Are you
Yeah.
ever gonna play that game with me, Pete? Are we gonna get
I
into
mean, you
Diablo 4?
fell off on it, so I think now we
I
have a
did,
chance.
yeah.
You and I we could
Yeah.
do it early next year. We jump in, we roll new characters, we do a whole thing of it. I think maybe now that's our chance, Steve. 'Cause I was
I think
excited
you
for
could be
that game.
right. It's a tough one though, right? You're gonna play that or you're gonna play Baldur's Gate 3, which is seemingly one of the best RPGs of all time.
Right.
I don't think you prioritize Diablo unless that is your game and you're really into it. It was my game. I
And you
just,
still didn't
fell off.
prioritize it because of
I
how
fell
much
off it for a bunch of reasons, right? Couldn't
Yeah.
play the thing offline, and that was a real big issue for it. And I think if I could have played it offline, I'd have played a bunch of it when I was away on vacation. But the fact that I couldn't and I was away from the internet just meant that it was just untenable. Whereas Baldur's Gate 3, I could, and Tears of the Kingdom, I could. So I played those games instead. But yeah, on my list of games that I would love to get around to, but probably won't, Alan Wake 2, Dredge, Dave the Diver, we've spoken about those. Dredge is probably higher on the list than the other two, just because I know how much Max enjoyed that game, and I think we need to play it and talk about it at some point.
That's why I'm a
Uh,
tastemaker.
yeah, similarly, Dead Space remake, I'd love to play. I didn't like the Resident Evil 4 the demo. It did nothing for me, but I'd love to play a AAA horror game that came out this year. Callisto Protocol didn't seem to really do much for people, but Dead Space
I
remake, I
reckon
never played the original.
yeah, I
Would
reckon
love
Dead
to check
Space is
it
if
out.
you didn't like Resident Evil, Dead Space will be the one for you. I think it is more of that sort of slower, you know, more traditional, uh, sort of survival horror, whereas there's lots of Resident Evil that is just like, "Oh my god, there's so much, like, I'm running and I'm trying to kill people, blah, 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 blah."
Yeah, which does nothing for me. That's not what I
Mhm,
want from a Resident
mm.
Evil game, unfortunately. Another horror game on my list is Lethal Company, which is an early access game that came out this year. It's like a co-op game that you team up with people, and you've got to collect scrap from abandoned moons and stuff. But there's like a lot of spooky stuff going on, and you've got to try and talk to each other through your walkie-talkies and take like stun grenades and stuff like that. So I'd like to check that one out with some friends at some point. Um, Also on my list, games that I've like looked at, tried demos of, Talos 2 and Chants of Sonar. They're both puzzle games that I'd like to play. It's just whether I've got time to play them or not. Moonstone Island, another one that I played the demo of, similarly to Pete, really loved it, but haven't had time to pick up the full game. Backpack Hero, which Pete reviewed last
Love that
week
game.
on the
Really good.
podcast. Yeah, really would love to check it out and play it. Don't know if I'm gonna have the time. And then Forza Motorsport. I probably will end up playing some of this just because I love car games and it's coming out. It's on Game Pass, so
You always like Forza.
why
I
not?
know you're a Forza guy.
I'm more Horizon than I am Motorsport, but this is the
Yeah.
first Motorsport we've had since 7, like, on the in the early Xbox One days, so it's quite exciting to have another one, which makes a change. And then Spider of Lanka, which is technically a DLC, but really is a new game. It's a new mystery for the case of the Golden Idol. And they're
Cool.
relabeling the game now Golden Idol Mysteries, and you buy these DLCs which go in, and they're like unique individual mysteries that you kind of work through. Case of the Golden Idol was one of my favorite games of last year, and having another mystery to work through in that format would be amazing. But it's whether I have the time for it.
Very nice.
Very nice indeed. So this last section is not necessarily about us. It's about the listeners, really. You know, there are going to be, like we've said before, there are a lot of games that come out this year, and a lot of games that we've managed to play, and maybe a lot of games people haven't been able to play. So, are there any games that people might have missed this year that you think are sort of worth checking out if there is sort of like a quieter period during Christmas, or you've got a lot of time? Are there any games that maybe we haven't spoken a lot about or given a lot of time to that you guys think would be worth sort of shouting out? Maybe letting other people play so that by the time we get to Game of the Year, they can argue for or against, or they can see where we're coming from, or anything like that. Maybe.
I would
This
definitely
this is a
the
tough
the
one.
first game that jumped to mind for me on that list was Backpack Hero, the game that Steve just mentioned. I reviewed
Sure.
it on the show last week. If you want to go hear my thoughts, it's really good. It's a really 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 sharp indie game, and it just came out like a few days ago, weeks ago now, I guess. But I think it coming out like later in the year, it's like it's I think it's an easy one to lose track of and not get your hands on. And I think if you like roguelites, if you like turn-based RPGs, if you like town builders, I think it is a really good example of all of those genres, and it marries them really well. Go listen to my full thoughts from last week if you want to, but definitely a game I recommend people check out if they need something, really gameplay oriented.
Wicked. I've got one game that I'm not sure it's going to make it onto my Game of the Year list, but I do think it really deserves a shout out. It's sort of made by a sort of very small team. I think it might have even just been 2 people. Called Vernal Edge. It's a sort of a Metroidvania with sort of actiony combat. I think it really feels quite sort of Kingdom Heartsy, the combat.
I
Or,
like that.
sort of similar style games. It's got a really like cool 3D map where you're on like a little spaceship or a little airship, sorry. And I think it was a really good game that I think came out. I was really impressed by it. I mean, it really went under the radar. I've not seen anyone really talk about it since then. And I'm not really going to get a chance to talk about it come Game of the Year with what I want to play and sort of I just have a feeling it's going to get knocked off. So yeah, I think check out Vernal Edge. It's not that expensive. It's on Switch. It's on Steam. I'm pretty sure it's going to be on the other consoles too. Just a big recommendation from me. Yeah,
Love that.
Steve.
I'm looking at my list. I'm struggling to really find anything that I've not spoken about.
Hmm.
I'm gonna mention Deceiving again. It's probably gonna be up there as one of my in my Game of the Year
Yeah, you really like that one. You
list.
talked about it a lot this year.
You have talked about it
I've
a lot.
played
Yeah? Shut
100. I've
up
just
about
checked.
it.
Played
Okay.
125 hours of that game this year, and
Respect.
I've had a great time with it. And it's a really cool little indie shooter. And I wish more people would play it because I feel like we're more likely to get more seasons, and it's more likely that that game survives. And I'm
Hmm.
selfish reasons I want to keep playing it.
Of course.
Um, 10 Dates, which was the sequel to 5 Dates, one of my favorite games I played last year, an FMV game. They're pretty rare these days. No one really makes FMV games apart from Wells Interactive. And then I would check out The Tenants. If you like House Flipper, but you're like, what if this game looked like The Sims? And what if I could live my millennial fantasy of actually owning property and then letting that out to people? Then you can. with the tenants, and it's a really fun, cool little management game with like some creativity and like mixes The Sims and House Flipper in like a theme hospital style game.
This is really sounds like it's really up my girlfriend's alley.
I love it.
You have to remind me of the name of that game later when I
I will send you a link. The tenants,
thank you.
and they've just released a new DLC, a pets DLC, so you can allow your tenants to have pets, which is nice.
Excellent.
Very
Thank
nice.
you very much. Yeah, brilliant. I Yeah, that's sort of all the stuff I wanted to talk about. I think that has given me a lot of stuff. That's it, given me more stuff that I want to play, and I'm very excited to see what happens come the end of the year when we start discussing these games. I want to see what Pete gets done. I want to see what Steve gets done. Will he ever fix Baldur's Gate 3? This is going to be, it's this has already been a fantastic year.
It's the will he,
Um,
won't he story of the year. It is the
it is.
Tune in next time to Dragon
it's the Ross and
Ball
Rachel.
Z. All right, so we've got a little bit more show ahead of us here in just a second. But before we do that, let me remind you that this episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of November. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valens, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Sobe, Pilkey, Snackago, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. You're all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. If you want to go check out those sister shows, if you want to go above and beyond and show your support just like they did, or if you just want to become a member of the community and keep the conversation rolling between episodes, you can find links to all that and much more over at flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can find all the places that we are all over the web, however you choose to get involved or show your support. Thank you for being a member of the community and tuning into this week's episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast. We're going to jump into the question block where listeners like you can write in and get their questions, thoughts, and comments read on the air. This first one comes from one Andrew Valentine over on the Discord, who wrote in and said, Jeff Keighley has claimed that security at the 2023 Game Awards will be tightened due to the stage invasions in previous years. How long into the show will the stage invasion happen, and what weird form will it take?
It depends how long it takes Pete to build up the courage to burst up on stage and shout, "Resident Evil 4 is a remake. It's not a 22p game." We'll just have to see when that happens.
I would love to
I would
not
like
be the main character of Twitter ever in my life. So I'm
No,
gonna avoid
It's
that one.
okay.
Yeah.
You'll never be the main character. What Elon owns it, so it's fine.
Yeah.
You're right.
I'd love to see Joseph Fares just like invade the stage and just like stand behind whoever it is with like a sign or something like that just says "fuck the Oscars." Something good, something
He'd be
fun
allowed
like
up
that.
though.
Yeah.
They'd let
Well,
him.
I they would let him, yeah, because it's Joseph Fares. But I kind of hope it doesn't happen again this year. It's been ridiculous. It's happened at 2 of his events this year. Like, come on, what's going on?
It's quite disruptive. Maybe we'll get someone going up on stage and holding up when Dave the Diver gets announced to sort of hold up the. Is it Nexon who owns it? Maybe it'll be Nexon's like net worth or their
Not an
sort of
indie, yeah.
their
Yeah.
their share
would be
price,
funny.
and just be like, this is not an indie game. Because you just see Jeff recently, I can't remember when he was, but I just read it earlier, saying that the word, independence is a word that has many meanings to many different people, basically not committing to an answer on whether Dave the Diver really counts as indie. So that's I
Basically
think
being
there's
like,
gonna be
yeah, it started a very spirited debate, and
yeah,
we'll take it into
basically.
consideration for next time.
Yeah, basically. There's nothing, there's no
Not
gonna
gonna
be no
change it,
mention of
right?
it.
Like it is what it is.
Yeah. If the game wins, oh boy, I look
It's gonna
forward
be
to
an
seeing what
interesting one.
happens there. But
Yeah.
I feel like this
I
year
don't
though
know.
was a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Because if they had gone by the strictly independent rules, it would have been Baldur's Gate, and a lot of people would have been upset about that too. So
yeah.
Mhm.
it's like, what are you gonna do, right? Like,
Yep.
It's a tricky one because isn't every Devolver Digital game then excluded because they're published by a
yes,
publicly traded
it should
company?
be right, and so would Annapurna, because
So
it's the definition is outside the traditional publishing
yeah,
system,
and
right?
Yep.
and those aren't.
Those
So
are, yeah, all
And it's like,
public.
I
the
guess,
category just needs reassessing, like we spoke on
yeah,
the episode where they were announced. It needs to be like it's this style. It feels like an indie game.
and it's
Yeah.
like you could argue that like some of those companies are less quote unquote traditional, and like maybe that's like where the argument comes into play. It's like, is it like, but I don't know. I think it's clear that like it's moved to a point where it's a stylistic moniker more than a meaning that the studio is independent, right?
Well,
That
yeah, like
doesn't
what about Oxenfree 2? Because that's like stylistically an indie game, but it's owned by Netflix.
right. And it's like, like a great example would be up until their acquisition by PlayStation, right? Like Destiny 2 would have been an indie game by that metric. And
Mhm,
Yeah.
that's clearly not what you mean when you say indie game,
Yeah.
right?
mhm.
So,
I think that I don't know why indie, and I'm sure it probably is in some ways, but when we say AAA game, we're talking about the budget. That game is AAA because its budget is this much money. A AAA publisher has paid this much money to do it, right?
It
A,
traditionally
a,
wasn't that though. That wasn't what it meant. It was like this is a. It was based on the AAA credit rating, and it was like this is a sure bet that this is not risky. This is a AAA
okay,
game. It's not risky at all.
interesting.
yeah,
Okay,
that's the origin of the term, right? And
well,
it's
yeah,
it's supposed to be a blockbuster,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And it's like the idea though, right, that we use them as being like mutually exclusive when like that doesn't really mean anything anyway, right? Because you could be an independent studio that makes AAA games, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what, Obsidian did for years prior to being acquired by Xbox, right? Like, for all intents and purposes, Fallout New Vegas, right, is an indie game
Yeah.
uh on some level, right? They were an independent studio that was, hired by a publisher to put out a game, right? So it's like, is any indie that has a publishing partner not an indie? Because then that would mean that like Stardew Valley isn't an indie, right? They had a publishing partner until they didn't. So is that the only thing that
Yeah,
matters?
yeah.
Like,
All my points are pointless then, because you've just yeah.
I don't know. I think it's pointless. I think it's just
I
like,
think AAA has
It's
become like the budget now. Like
yeah,
that is what people see it as. It's like
definitely. I agree. It's
well, I
it,
think too many people think of it as a quality thing. Like, oh, it's a AAA game because because I can look at it and tell it's a AAA game, but that's not. It's just
but
too
it's also like, what does
confusing.
that mean, right? Because it's like the difference in quality between these
Mm,
games is massive, and it's also in the eye of the beholder because there's a lot of
yeah,
people that will look at a big AAA game that comes out and sells well and critically reviews well and be like, it's creatively bankrupt, it's this, it's that, the quality isn't there, but it looks pretty, so that makes it triple. It's like,
you're describing Spider-Man too. The
here,
the
I out here talking shit about a game he 100%ed.
Yeah, I'm very qualified to talk shit about it in that case. Um, when Kena Bridge of Spirits was announced, and I remember there was a lot of talk about how like, oh, see, this is what indie developers can do when they've got a Sony behind them. Sony is single-handedly sort of showing other indie developers up, blah blah blah. And that was a strong 7 out of 10 game. It looked very pretty, but everything else was sort of like down here. Whereas, I think it's very unfair to some of the other games that came out around the same time that were much less impressive looking, but were by and large much better games. But that's a completely different debate for a whole other time, I think.
All right, we're gonna save the rest of the questions in the question block for next week. We're gonna we'll end it there for the day. I'll let Max get the final word on that one. Thank you guys for joining us here in another episode of the Flip Screen Games podcast. Remember, if you want to write in like Andrew Valentine did and get your thoughts read on the air during the question block, you can hit us up in a bunch of ways. You can come and join our Discord to keep the conversation rolling between episodes. You can write into our email address, or you can just, if you're on a platform where you can put a comment, scroll down and put a comment. Well, and if it's a nice, well thought out question, we'll read it. If you go to the email address of the Discord, even if it's not nice or well thought out, we'll probably read it. So you take that for what it is. And of course, if you want to get involved in any of the other dozens of ways that you can, right? Head over to flipscreen.games. That's a website. If you want to go above and beyond to show your support, you can go become a Patreon supporter. You can get all kinds of awesome perks and goodies, including early access to the show and some hours of exclusive content. So however you choose to get involved or show your support, we thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Flip Screen Games podcast. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been, hold on. He's been Max. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.
Bye.